Hi there. So today I'm going to be doing, I didn't really want to do the mid-year freakout tag. I wasn't really feeling that. That felt a little too in-depth to me. So I'm going to be doing a mid-year review of just my stats. I use the Storygraph app on my phone and they have all kinds of built-in stats. So I'm just going to use those. I'm going to go over the stats that they give me for my reading for the first half of the year. And yeah, hopefully this is interesting. If you like stats, maybe you'll enjoy it. If not, feel free to skip it, I guess. Okay, so getting right into it. First and foremost, I have read 21 books so far this year for a total of 9,288 pages. So for me, that's not too bad. I feel like my reading was really bad last year, so 21 books halfway through the year, I'm all right with it. My top three kind of moods is what they call it, are lighthearted, adventurous, and emotional. I'll have 8 books that I've read that fit in those categories. The next one is pace. So for pace, I have read 52% medium-paced books, 19% fast-paced, and 29% slow-paced. I'm actually kind of surprised by slow-paced. Okay, so first of all, these stats are all based on like what Storygraph users have like categorized books as. So that just means that 29% of the books I've read, other Storygraph users said were slow. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're slow. If you don't trust the opinion of people that have read the books that you've read, I guess. But I feel like I don't read that many slow books, so I'm kind of surprised that that is 29%. Okay. Yeah. So the books it says that I read were slow, are A Discovery of Witches, Shadow of Night, and The Book of Life, which I 100% agree. I completely forgot that I read that whole trilogy this year. So, I mean, I guess that's why I'm doing a mid-year review. I don't know. But yeah, I read the whole All Souls trilogy earlier this year, and yes, 100% agree that is a very slow-paced trilogy. And then 2 R.S. Gray books, which I wouldn't necessarily call R.S. Gray slow. I would call them kind of just a medium pace. Which, if you don't know R.S. Gray, they're romance books. They're on Kindle Unlimited, so they're short. So I wouldn't say those are slow paced. And the last one is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, the first book in the Wheel of Time series. It's a long book, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's slow paced. But I mean, I guess if I had to choose, maybe I would say it's more of like a between slow and medium paced. Because like it's a long book, but things keep happening. Like they move the story along, so you're not like sitting in one spot for very long. So I wouldn't really, I don't think I would really call that slow paced. But other people that read it say it was slow paced, I guess. So we're just going with that. Okay, so the next stat they have is page number. And this one is interesting because it's pretty evenly split. It says books under 300 pages, 32%, books 300 to 499 pages, 37%, and books 500 plus pages, 32%. So that's 6 books under 300 pages, 7 books between 300 and 499, and 6 books that were 500 plus pages, which again would have been kind of the same as the slow paced. It would have been Eye of the World, it would have been the All Souls trilogy. All of those books were over 500 pages, so there you go. Okay, the next one is fiction versus nonfiction. This one I feel like I need to work on. Not that you like have to read nonfiction, but I've read an alarmingly small amount of nonfiction this year. I've read 3 nonfiction books and 18 fiction, which I don't really have much to say about that one, so we're just going to move on. So the next graph is genres. And my top 3 genres are romance, fantasy, and contemporary. I'm not really surprised by this. I was in a little bit of a reading slump at the beginning of the year, and so I was reading a lot of that, R.S. Gray, Sarah J. Maas, that kind of stuff that counts as romance. Yeah, so it says I've read 15 romance books. This kind of makes sense because I feel like this chart, it repeats books, like anything that was put in the romance category, and then things that were put in the fantasy category. So they could show up in both. So 15 romance books, that makes sense because that probably you know, includes the All Souls trilogy. That probably includes all the, well, it definitely includes all the R.S. Gray. It includes my rereads of the Court of Aquitar series. I didn't read the first one. I reread A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings and Ruin. So it would include those. So I'm not really that surprised that romance is so high on the list, or so much higher than anything else. It includes Too Late by Colleen Hoover as a romance. I wouldn't necessarily consider that a romance. I guess it is. Yeah, I mean, I guess it is. What else would it be? But it wasn't very romantic. It was very dark. I guess it was a dark romance, but whatever. Yeah, Discovery of Witches. So yeah, this makes sense. This definitely makes sense. And then fantasy, it's a lot of the same thing. So all the Sarah J. Maas, the All Souls trilogy, Eye of the World, all that stuff. And contemporary is the third most, and that is just all the R.S. Gray that I read at the beginning of the year. So moving on. Next is format. So this really shows where my reading has been this year so far. It says I have read 14% print, which is 3 books physical. So digital has been 33%, and the majority of my reading this year has actually been listening to audiobooks. It's 11 books for 52%. So that is the majority of my reading has actually been listening to audiobooks. And I'm okay with that. I have a long commute to work, so I just listen to audiobooks, and that's where the majority of it comes from. When I get home, I don't really have a whole lot of time to sit down and physically read, and then usually I'll read an ebook for a little bit before bed. So yeah, would I like to be reading more physically? Yes. Do I really have time or energy to be reading physically? Not really. Hopefully that'll improve in the second half of the year, but I mean, I'm not going to be too mad at myself if I just keep listening to audiobooks. The next thing is most read authors. No surprise here, R.S. Gray is my #1 read author for the year, followed by Sarah J. Maas and Deborah Harkness. I read 5 R.S. Gray, 4 Sarah J. Maas, and then obviously the 3 Deborah Harkness from the All Souls trilogy. Yeah, that's no surprise at all. Okay, number of books and pages. I'm not going to go over everything here. I mean, obviously you can see the image, but June was my highest reading month, and yeah, it's kind of funny how it goes kind of like up, down, up, down, up, down. And the last stat that they have on the Storygraph app is star ratings, and I have the most 4 stars. I have 8 4 stars. I have 7 3 stars. I have 4 5 stars. Why am I going in such a weird order? Okay. I have 4 5 stars. I have 8 4 stars. I have 7 3 stars, and then 1 each for 2 star and 1 star. And that gives me an average rating of 3.62. for my stars. I normally don't do partial stars. In fact, I don't think I've ever done a partial star. On Storygraph, it does give you the option to do like 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, but I think I've pretty much stayed away from that. I just do whole stars. All right, so those were all the stats from the Storygraph website. I'm just gonna go through, I'm gonna go to my spreadsheet here. Since I haven't been making booktube videos, just in case you're curious about the books that I've actually read this year, I'm just going to quickly go through the list. So in January, I read Not a Happy Family by Sherry Lapina. I gave it 4 stars as a thriller. Also in January, I'm not going to say the month every time, I read A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I gave it 3 stars, and it's fantasy romance. And I read Anything You Can Do by R.S. Gray, which is a romance. I gave it 4 stars. Then in February, I read Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. I gave it 3 stars. It's a romance. Love the One You Hate by R.S. Gray. It's a romance. I gave it 3 stars. And Shadow of Night by Deborah Harkness. Fantasy romance. I gave it 4 stars. March, I read The Book of Life by Deborah Harkness. Fantasy romance. I gave it 4 stars. And Date Me Like You Mean It by R.S. Gray. It's a romance. I gave it 3 stars. And then April, I read A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I gave it 5 stars. It was 5 stars the first time. It's 5 stars the second time. Finding Your Element by Ken Robinson. That's one of my nonfictions. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't like it. I honestly, I don't even really remember it. I feel like it was very dry. I listened to the audiobook and it wasn't very memorable for me. A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, gave it 5 stars. Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, I gave it 3 stars. And Simply Clean by Becky Rapinchuk. It's a nonfiction. I gave it 5 stars. It's just basically like how to clean your house for people that don't know how to clean. Every now and then I like reading something like that to see if there's any tips or tricks that I haven't learned yet. Yeah, that's just, it's whatever. It's not really worth going into detail about. And last in April, I read Not So Nice Guy by R.S. Gray. I gave it 4 stars. Then May was kind of a weird month because I started stuff, but then I never, like, I didn't finish a single thing in May. I just, like, so I did a bunch of reading, but I didn't actually finish anything. So then we jump into June, and in June, I did a wrap-up video, so if you've seen that, you can click off here. You don't really need to hear this, but I'm just going to go over what I read in June again. June, I read The Fortunate Ones by R.S. Gray. I gave it 3 stars. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I gave it 4 stars. The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I gave it 5 stars. Too Late by Colleen Hoover. I gave it 1 star. The Off Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. I gave 2 stars. And Pink Is Not a Color by Lindsay Ward. I gave 4 stars. So that's what I've read so far this year. Oh, and sorry, one more. I finished a book in July already, and that was Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. I gave it 4 stars. So those are all the books that I've read so far in 2022, and those are my stats. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like videos like this, let me know. I will definitely make more of them because I'm a stats nerd, so I always enjoy watching stats videos. But yeah, so that's the catch up on all of my reading for 2022, and hopefully from here on out, I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. I think 21 books for the first 6 months of the year is pretty good for me, considering I feel like I've read nothing. So yeah, hopefully I'll have a successful second 6 months of the year, second half of the year, makes more sense, I guess. And yeah, I'll probably do another one of these videos at the end of the year just to wrap up all of the stats, because yeah, I'm really enjoying, that's the other thing I wanted to say. If you don't use the Storygraph app or the Storygraph website, I would recommend it. Like I said, love stats, and I think they give you much more fun stats than Goodreads. I mean, Goodreads has the wrap-up thing at the end of the year, which is fun, but I like being able to see the stats as I go, and Storygraph does it, and it has all the graphs and stuff that I put in this video are all from the Storygraph website. So yeah, I like it. I recommend it. If you haven't checked out the app, you should, or the website. And yeah, I guess that's it for this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.